the young man, maybe has never really gotten off the couch, did not grow up an athlete, is starting to hit that age, mid-20s, where their body's changing and it's all downhill from here if they're not on top of it. And they're realizing, oh shit, I eat a bag of Doritos and I feel that the next day. Where do you start with this guy?
Fitness is, for me, this is for me, and I see it for so many other people. It's the beginning, it's the first place to start, right? When you feel lost, when you feel hopeless, when you feel anxious, when you feel depressed, when you've let yourself down, when you've let people around you down, when you're disgusted with yourself, any of these dark things we all go through one time and another in varying degrees. Start with physical fitness. It'll be the first domino that leads to this positive flywheel in your life. You can change the whole world just by starting by getting fit. So I'd encourage those people to give it a chance, give it a shot. Go to the gym, walk on the treadmill for 5 minutes. Come back the next day, walk for 6. Come back the next day, walk for 7. Just that. There's this little thing that happens in your brain, this like dopamine release, this feeling of satisfaction, this feeling of growth, this feeling of momentum. It doesn't matter where you start, is my point. What matters is that you begin.
Eddy Roche. It's a Sunday. It's raining in LA. Thank you for joining.
Yeah, happy to be here. Thanks for having me, Jay.
Super honored and psyched to have you on the show today. Little backstory. I moved to Los Angeles a little over a year ago. Mm-hmm. Good friend of mine, Aiden Gold. Shout out to Aiden Gold.
I didn't know that Aiden connected.
Yeah, he had invested in your gym.
Yeah.
A couple years back.
Yeah.
And so I moved to LA and I'm like, Aiden, which gym should I come to? He's like, well, Dominate. Mm-hmm. That's, the only gym worth considering. And I'm like, all right, great. So I worked out with him there once. And I think I made more friends in that first 20 minutes of that workout than I've ever made in any other gym ever. I was like, there's something really interesting here. There's just this flavor of community and friendliness at a gym that when I first walked in, I was like, oh, it's like Equinox with plants.
Yeah.
It's on Main Street in Santa Monica, DMN8 for anyone listening. Check out this gym. Awesome spot. And Thank you. I was like, well, I got to meet the owner. Mm-hmm. And that's you. So appreciate you being on.
Yeah. Thank you, Jake. Thanks for saying that. And shout out Aiden for the connection.
Yeah, 100%. So
wonderful compliment.
I don't often start with tell me about your backstory, but you have a really fascinating backstory. Mm-hmm. So instead of asking hey, Eddy, what do you do and where are you from? Mm-hmm. I want to ask, who are you?
Mm-hmm. That's it?
That's it. Who are you?
You take it many different ways, but I'll just say this straightforward, surface level. My name's Eddy to friends, and originally from Australia. Moved to America, to Los Angeles when I was 11 years old, and was an athlete for many years. Straight out of school, went into athletics, did that for a decade, was quite competitive, and then eventually became an entrepreneur, worked in tech for the better part of a decade. And this most recent chapter of my life, I decided to build a community and a business and a company around what I was really most passionate about and what I felt like I had the most to offer, which was building a fitness community. Mm-hmm. So I started Dominate, which is where you're now a member, back in 2019. And since then, we've been building what has become one of the more prominent fitness brands here in West Los Angeles. And we consider ourselves a bit like a boutique Equinox, to your point. Mm-hmm. Really leaning heavily into having a premium facility, having a wide variety of products, services, classes, and taking very seriously this concept of community, and being like the third place that people can come and where they're actually hanging out with people and building relationships. And we host social events. We do social club, like serious events, like hundreds of people, ticketed events. And so that's a bit about me and what I do.
So you, growing up, you're a pretty serious soccer player, traveling the world. Mm-hmm. Is that right?
Yeah. Well, when I was real young, I was always passionate about sport. And then as you get, 10, 11, 12, 13, you kind of get to that age where it's like, okay, pick one. So I went from just being passionate about sports in general to being a soccer player. That was my most favorite sport that I was drawn towards. And then played very competitively and aspired to become a professional soccer player. And that journey took me to Costa Rica for several months, Brazil, England, to Spain briefly. And to make a long story short, never reached sort of the heights of my what I was seeking. I never got a big contract at a European club, which is kind of like the gold standard for soccer. Had a few interesting opportunities to bounce around some of the lower, less prominent leagues in Central America. But by the time I was 18, it was pretty clear to me that like, hey, dude, it's not happening. So
What was that like?
it was humbling, probably the best thing for me at the time because I was a very headstrong kid. I'd left school early, so I dropped out of high school to play soccer and to chase my dream of becoming a professional soccer player. And I probably didn't take it as seriously as I needed to really get where I wanted to go. By the time I was 18, obviously it's too late. So it's like, you know, you're 18 years old and life teaches you your first lesson about what it really takes to achieve greatness. And so I moved back home with my parents. My parents at the time were very well off, very, very comfortable and very wealthy. So I was able to move back in home with them. And they were always very encouraging and very, you know, telling me to go grab life by the horns and go and chase my dreams and don't let anyone stop me. And so it was like, okay, the soccer dream didn't work out. What should I do? Maybe I'll go back to college. And basically started racing in triathlons quite competitively.
Just like picked up a bike and started swimming one day?
Sort of. I mean, I'd been a cyclist for several years earlier as just one of my soccer coaches encouraged me to get on the bike to build leg strength. And then I fell in love with it. And then he found out I was a swimmer as a kid. I was a very competitive swimmer in New South Wales where I grew up in Australia. So when he heard that, he said, well, I know you can run, so let's do a triathlon. So he signed me up for the Santa Barbara triathlon when I was like, I think I was 12 or 13 years old.
With adults?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. So I had been doing triathlon very casually, sort of, you know, just recreationally on the side as I was a soccer player through my teenage years. And when it kind of dawned on me that like I was never going to get a contract at like a big club in soccer as an 18-year-old, it's like if it hasn't happened by the time you're 16 or 17, it sounds crazy, but you're over the hill. Once you're 18, you're done. So I was like, what do I want to do? And then I started learning about triathlon and learning about, you know, this, you can be an Olympian in triathlon, you can be a world champion. There's this Ironman thing. And I learned that a lot of these guys who were the world champions at the time, a lot of them were Australian. So the sport had this, like, Australia has this like national heritage of triathlon. And a lot of them didn't start triathlon until they were in their mid-20s.
Yeah. Isn't the average age of an Ironman like 44?
It used to be. It's getting younger now. So
Okay.
the top guys used to be in their 40s. Now that's changing and the sport's evolved and it's become so much more competitive. But back when I got into it, I was like still very, very young and I was like, I could still do this. So I started racing competitively, started winning some local races and then, you know, winning bigger and bigger races, getting the sponsorships and all that stuff, and things were trending in that direction. And I was very fortunate to have the financial support of my parents for those 2 or 3 transitional years. And then by the time it was like I was ready to turn pro and like do it properly, I was like 20 years old. I was down in Australia. And to make a long story short, I was just about to transition into the pros and like start racing full time. And my parents got evicted from their home. So they went through a real like financial hardship, I guess I would say, just to summarize. They just went through a tough time and it got progressively worse and worse and worse over a number of years. And right around that 08 era that, you know, so many families in America went through the same thing. And without getting into the details, you know, things changed in my father's job and in his industry and all this stuff, you know. And to make a long story short, they lost everything. Totally wiped out, evicted from their home, forced out. They had nothing. They had nothing to fall back on. They had no 401k, no properties, no stocks. Like, it was all gone. And that was like, changed my whole life, of course.
You were how old at this time?
I was probably 21 when that happened. It was pretty ugly from the time I was like 17, 18.
Yeah.
All the way through to when I was 20, it was like increasingly ugly. And then when it was I was 20, 21, it was like, boom, done. Like, they're in a real pickle. And I was like, you know, at the time I was still torn. Even I remember being 20 years old and going out for these like 8-hour training days. And I remember thinking in the back of my mind, like, man, this is selfish. Like, what am I really doing out here? I'm never going to win a world championship. Like, I'm never going to make tens of millions of dollars. Like, it's not happening. Like, I could be a journeyman. I could be okay. And I could be middle of the pack. And a lot of guys do that. And that's beautiful. That sounds like an adventure. That sounds like a wonderful, you know, a life well spent. But when all of a sudden the people you love most are going through financial hardship and you know you have the ability to do something about it, that changes everything. So you lose the motivation to get up and swim for 2.5 hours, go home, refuel, get on the bike, ride 3.5 hours, get home, refuel, go out for a trail run for 90 minutes. Like, you just like, I was like, what am I fucking doing? So that was like, you know, the big sort of motivating factor for me dropping sport altogether. And I came back to Los Angeles and I started a tech company because I was like the bold sort of ambitious kid that I was. You know, I was always going for like just set a crazy goal and shoot for the stars. So I was like, I'm going to start a tech company. I'm going to make $1 billion. I'm going to save my family. Like, that's what I'll do. Like, that sounds really crass, but like, that's really what I thought.
It was also the like Zuckerberg, Spiegel era where we all thought like, oh my God, a young dude who's 23 in his dorm room can become a billionaire in 2 years.
Yeah. And I had friends at Stanford and you know, all these like you would hear these stories, you'd read these stories about these kids who start these apps. And like, you know, I had friends who knew these guys and I was like, come on, like anything I've ever set my mind to, I've done reasonably well at. Like, I'm going to try this. So I did that, and I did that for, like I said, the better part of a decade, and just the same thing over and over. I got my ass kicked as a soccer player, got my ass kicked as an endurance athlete, got my ass kicked in the real world as an entrepreneur. And every chapter, you get wiser and you get stronger, and you start figuring out who you are. Every time, you know, the universe shuts a door on you and says you are not, this room is not for you. Every time you learn who you are not, you get closer to figuring out who you are. You know, so there was all these different versions of myself in my teenage and 20s. You know, teenage years in my 20s where it was like, it's all okay. Like it didn't work out, but it got me one step closer to the next thing. And so that's my backstory.
Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, of course.
That's a great one.
Yeah.
When you were early 20s, I'm curious, like, you know, having conversations with parents, kind of seeing hardship really start to settle in, and you're at that pretty pivotal transition of no longer a boy, starting to become a man, but like, oh shit, like the world's maybe a bit of a nasty place. What did that feel like? Yeah.
So for me, I think I was always somebody who I just naturally, I love challenges. I love adventures. I love uncertainty. I can deal with risk, all that stuff. So I don't think that not knowing where to go, what to do, what's in my future, that was never hard for me. I think my story, and when I think about, you know, the quote unquote, you know, what you can call it trauma, or you can call it, you know, difficulty, hardship, whatever, adversity. It was mostly just watching people I care about going through it and really wanting to change that for them. You know, I never thought as 20, like, oh, poor me. Like, I've got to fend for myself. Like, not at all. I was like, that's what you're supposed to do when you're 20 and you're a young man. Like, I'm going to be fine.
Yeah.
So it was never like, oh, I'm in so much pain, poor me. It was more like, God, you know, my family have been so good to me, and they've given me every opportunity as a young kid, and they've been so supportive of me as a young man. And what have I done in return? Nothing. So I just felt this like incredible crushing pressure and debt, you know, that I know a lot of young people do. You know, you love your parents, and not everyone gets brought up in a beautiful, loving household, but I was very grateful to be brought up that way. So you come out of the college years and it's like, hey, time to join the real world. And oftentimes it's not, I want all these things for myself. It's just, you want to return the favor. You want to, you know, you want to be reciprocating, and you want to demonstrate, that they raised you well, and you know, a lot of young men I talk to want to make their dad proud, want to make their mum proud. And so it was more of that was just so difficult for me. But you know, pressure and hardship makes you who you are. And it was all positive in the end. Looking back, I'm very grateful for everything I've been through. And I'll just say, you asked me a question. I was going to mention this idea that help is not coming. I think that was very liberating when you finally actually realize and internalize help is not coming. Because when you're a kid, your parents feed you, they give you shelter, they give you clothing, all these things. And then you're a teenager and maybe less so. And then your 20s hit. And at some point, if you're lucky, they're not looking after you at 20. Those unlucky ones who still get looked after into their 30s and beyond, they've got a lot of hard shit coming their way. It's actually better off. You're better off learning this lesson earlier because it makes you stronger. When you truly become an adult, you realize that help is not coming. I'm on my own. I need to provide for me first and foremost. And then I can start to look about, you know, put your own mask on. It's like the airplane's going down, put your mask on first. Yeah. Right. And so we all spend a decade plus doing that metaphorically before we can go and serve the community, serve others. And so I think, 21, that was like when it hit me, like, dude, like, you're on your own. Like, you know, whatever you do or don't do, like, but, you know, a lot of kids figure that out at 12. Some kids have no support system at all. So I'm never over here like, oh, poor me. Like, you know, some people get the school of hard knocks when they're 8, 9. You hear these incredible stories about these great men and women who overcome just ridiculous adversity. And so the greater the adversity and the earlier you learn that lesson, oftentimes the greater the man or the woman become, and the more they have then to share with other people. And, you know, so it was a gift to learn that lesson when I did, but
Something that worries me a lot about the world today, but especially like this young men generation, call it right now, it's 2025, so men who are 21, 23, 25 years old. There's so much blame and victimization that they hold.
Yeah.
Oh, God, blaming their parents, blaming the government, blaming an ex-girlfriend, blaming their friends, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And I don't remember our generation having that so much when we were that age. Maybe we did, and maybe we had it a bit as well. But what's your take on that, and how do we help sculpt the next, up and coming young men?
Yeah, dude, I feel so strongly on this topic. Yeah, I'm a huge believer that every young man, and I don't mean to just single out men, like women too, but I think of myself, so I can relate to men, obviously on a different, like at a different level. But for every young man, it's so much more productive and helpful for you and for everyone around you and for the world at large if you believe in your heart of hearts that every single thing that happens to you is your fault. Every good thing is your fault. Every bad thing is your fault. And that sounds awful. When you first hear it, you're like, whoa, dude, that's not fair. Like, what about all this unfair shit that happens to people? I'm not saying that I'm not saying this concept is absolutely true. What I'm saying is that believing it is will lead for you to become a better, stronger human, a better leader. You'll be able to help yourself and help those around you if you believe this thing. Even if you know in your intellectual mind that that's not true. If something, if someone sneaks up behind me and stabs me in the back, that's not my fault, right? But by believing, if you believe that actually, even if that happened, that would be your fault, what are you going to do? Well, you're going to keep your head on a swivel. You're going to install security devices to make, like, that's a silly example, but like, think about the things that, do and don't happen to you. So for me, when I was a young kid, for example, I remember being like 21 and being like, basically you're on your own now. You've got nothing. I had a few expensive bikes that I was racing on and I had like nothing, right? And I'm like, shit, I've got nothing. So on the one hand, I could have said, well, poor me. Like, my parents told me to chase my dream from a young age, so I did that. And they always told me that they'd have my back. And now, I don't have a college degree because I was chasing my dream like they told me to. And that would be the weak, victim, pathetic mindset.
Yeah.
But the real mindset is, hey, I'm 21 years old. I had these incredible people who cared about me and told me to chase my dreams. Some shit went south, but it's on me. I could have applied myself in high school, and I had every opportunity all my friends had who went to Harvard and Yale and Princeton and Stanford. I could have done that. I chose not to. I could have been on my third year of a Wall Street career by now. Like, I had everything. I chose not to. It's my fault that I'm in this position. This is no one else's fault. And then you believe that, right? And then you develop this idea of agency that, like, no matter what happens or doesn't happen, it's down to me and what my actions or my inactions. And so when you buy into that, sure, it might take a few years for that to begin to manifest positively. But when you truly believe everything that happens or doesn't happen is your fault, you'll begin to take action, because you'll buy into the concept that your actions lead to your future. Your destiny is in your hands. And I bought into that wholeheartedly at 21, 22, and I started.
What did that do for you? It must have been, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I would assume that was very freeing.
Yeah, I think so, 100%. Hard stuff is always going to be hard, but you get to choose your heart kind of thing, So it's like, okay, you can get to work and start building, right, this man you want to become or this idea of success or whatever. Or you can not do that, but you're still going to experience the pain, the pain of failure or the pain of, not fulfilling your potential. And so freeing, I guess, is a word maybe, but there's no escaping the difficulty of life, right? So it's like you choose your difficult. Yeah. You've seen that before, like it's this common phrase. Yeah. It's so true. So it's just to round out what I was saying, like agency, you got to believe everything's your fault, and if no ifs, ands, or buts, every single thing, right? And so you should have a plan in place, and then you should have a fallback plan, right? Like it's going to force you to prepare for your future. It's going to force you to take all the actions that you should take to achieve what you want. Yeah.
Do you find people coming to you often looking for advice and mentorship?
Recently.
What are they asking for?
More often. Well, when I first, started my my business, I mean, being a 2-time pro athlete turned fitness trainer. Of course, most people would come to me for fitness advice. So, that was the personal brand that I had built. And even more so, I think we're all building personal brands, right? So I always thought about this back when I first got into this idea of I'm going to build a company. What should I build? I thought a lot about brand because I was learning about how companies get built and what is a brand. And what I'd realized is that everyone has a brand. I already had a brand, right? I was like, there's this great Navalism, Naval Ravikant, modern day philosopher. He says, what do your friends come to you for advice on? Yeah. And I remember thinking that when I was like 22, 23, or maybe I was a bit older, honestly. Maybe I was like 24, 25, and I'd already had a few failed ventures. And I realized that I was building things in domains where no one viewed me as an expert.
Right.
So it was like maybe I wanted to be an expert over here, but really the world viewed me as an expert on these other things, right?
Yeah.
And to be honest, like it was people skills, right? I remember in high school, I would like get my friends asking me about people. Like I was good with people. I was hosting parties. I was a sort of a center of the community, a leader somewhat. Like I was just good at, how to talk to women, how to, so friends talking about confidence maybe was things that people would ask me about sport, ask me about my diet, how to get your abs like that. Right. So that was my personal brand that I'd built over a decade of without trying.
And did you like that
sure.
brand?
Yeah, of course. That was just me being me. I'm obsessed with fitness. I love wellness. I love sport, athleticism. I love people. I love hosting parties and making people feel good and laughing. So that was my personal brand. But I spent all these years trying to build things over here in these other spaces. And once I sort of the Naval thing really clicked and I was like, what am I doing over here? Like, why don't I build something in this space over here? And I was like, okay, well, let's try it. So I built a personal training company. And within like 6 months, the personal training company was grossing more than all of my previous ventures.
Funny how that happens, right?
Exactly. It was like so obvious. And I remember just this feeling like, what is wrong with me? If I just started this business when I was 18, 19, I could have bought a house for my parents by now. I could have done all these things. And God love them, credit to them. There's a few kids on YouTube and whatnot. They did do that. They found their thing early. They started and they built it. And by the time they're like 30, they've got these like empires. So I was like, okay, this is what I should be doing. This is just, it took me a while to get here. I took this wild, long journey to get here, but here, this is it for me. So I built my personal training company, and then I started doing outdoor group workouts. I built a community, started doing a meal prep company. I did all these different things under this umbrella of health and wellness and community. And eventually they grew and I formalized it, rolled them up, and it became Dominate. So I forget the initial question now, but
well, it's funny. A story comes to mind for me as well, which is almost the same thing. I grew up very artistic, kind of my version of yours. But I was in high school. I was like AP Studio Art. I was named Next Picasso in high school. I sold custom Vans sneakers that I would design on YouTube. Like
what high school?
In New York.
Okay, cool.
Westchester, New York.
Cool. You're a hardcore artist.
Somewhat.
Sick.
And then just was like so burnt out on painting when I graduated high school that I got into design. Started an agency building websites and brochures and logos and like anything kind of design related. And for years in my 20s, it just felt like the thing that was below me. People would come to me, be like, hey, can you design me a logo, website? These things that I just was naturally doing for so many years in my life that I was like, I wasn't put on this planet to do this like easy, silly little thing, like make YouTube videos.
You were going for the thing.
I'm trying to change the whole world.
Yeah.
And
you and me both.
It was these like moonshot ideas. I was like, I'm not getting out of bed in the morning to like, I'm not going to change the world by making logos for people or like helping them with their podcast.
Yeah.
But I'll change the world through, I don't know, completely disrupting this or that. So I spent 5-6 years chasing the moonshots. And none of them worked. Right. Sure, I was able to build followership on LinkedIn and like built a newsletter list and stuff. And I learned a lot and built a network. And then finally it was the thing that I just kind of was like, I was in between moonshot ideas. I was like, well, my last moonshot didn't work. I have to figure out my next moonshot, but I want to take some time to do that. I need to pay the bills, keep the lights on. So I'll like keep working on websites for people. Started making some podcasts for friends. And then it led to making a dozen podcasts for friends. And now we've got a podcast empire. And I'm like, had I started that 10 years ago, like the beginning of podcasts, it'd be a whole different freaking ball game now. Yes, it's going to happen, but it's going to be in the future versus have already happened. And I'm like, man, why are we all chasing moonshots? Just chase the thing that you're naturally good at, because to you, it's nothing. But to everyone else, like that's going to change the world. Like your health and fitness to you might just be like, no, I'm just like, it's nothing to me. To me, art, design, like it was nothing to me. But like you do that. Be the best at this like super specific one thing that seems so obvious and easy to you. Like I think that's where our gift lies. How do we encourage people to like? It essentially is an exercise in shedding the ego. How would you encourage that?
There's this thing called, I study this ancient Eastern philosophy called Vedanta. And there's this concept of Svadharma. What is your Svadharma? And your Svadharma is your true nature. And I think that, and I do believe there is an awakening, at least here locally and amongst our sort of generation here. I can't speak for other parts of the world, but I do believe that a lot of people are starting to figure out that instead of doing the thing that society tells you to do, or doing the thing that your parents tell you to do, or doing the thing that all your friends tell you to do, there's a lot of value in blocking all of that out and going inward and asking yourself, who am I? And what what do I love to do? What am I passionate about? Where does my mind go when it's still? Like, what are the things that uniquely fire me up, and what gives me energy? And I see a lot of that in our generation. It's beautiful, right? Maybe with the internet now, we have these opportunities to launch niche businesses.
The ability to put a clip on TikTok and reach 10 million people before you wake up tomorrow.
Totally. And all the leading, sort of most successful people we can name, a lot of them have these niche businesses built around their personal brand where they're just being themselves, right?
Yeah.
So it's the sort of cat's out of the bag. Like, it's a thing that can happen now. So I think there's so much wisdom, and frankly, there's so much virtue in figuring out who you are and following that path.
Yeah.
And I recognize that it's easier for some people to monetize that, and it's easier for some people to commercialize what they're passionate about. And I don't want to be ignorant of that, because I happen to be passionate about something which is like a commodity, like fitness. Like, everyone needs fitness. So it's easy for me to say, I just follow my heart and built this big business. If someone's passionate about something that's far more niche, they might be like, bro, that's bad advice for me. I don't know that it is. I think that you should truly explore your curiosity. You should truly ask yourself who you are. You should truly go inward and find your Svedama. And try a bunch of stuff until you find something that lights you up, because it's just such a waste of your life, and it's such a shame. You are not serving yourself, nor are you serving those around you in your inner circle or society at large. If you are living you are not living in alignment with your Svedama. Mm-hmm. And there's this idea of paradharma, which is the opposite, right? And so many people are doing things that they hate or doing things that they miss. It's like, it's just no way to live. Like, it's that simple.
Yeah. So. Something that I think about a lot is this concept of like passion versus obsession. Mm-hmm. I remember, I think I was 19, maybe 20. Mm-hmm. I was living in Colorado, spending a lot of time in the startup scene there, running an agency, so working with a lot of startups. And one of the most prolific VCs ever is Brad Feld. Brad Feld gave a talk one night, and I went to see it, and then was talking to him after. And somebody asked a question like, Brad, everyone's saying like, follow your passion, but I don't know what I'm passionate about. So where do I start? Good question. We don't really live in a society where we ever help young people figure out what are they actually passionate about. He gave a really profound answer, which was fuck passion. So I don't care about passion. You could fake passion. I'm looking for obsession. Looking for that thing that, I'll give an example. At the time, I was very passionate about mountain biking. Yeah. I'd mountain bike 4 or 5 days a week. It was a hobby of mine. Right. But if it was snowing, I wasn't gearing up and getting on my mountain bike. If I was really hungover, I wasn't getting on my mountain bike. Because it was a passion of mine. Right. If I was obsessed, would not matter if I was hungover or if it was snowing. I'd be out on the bike regardless. Right. He's like, and I'm looking for entrepreneurs like that, who are fucking out of their mind, obsessed with a thing. So we can reframe the question a little bit. Hey world, I don't know what I'm passionate about. Where should I start? How about, I'm not obsessed with anything. Where should I start with that? So how do we encourage or inspire people to become obsessed with something?
I think it's an interesting question. I want to preface by saying, just because I'm someone who has found my Svedama and found my passion doesn't automatically make me an expert on the subject matter for helping everybody else find theirs. Sure. I think none of us are experts. We're just dudes with a microphone. Yeah, I can offer my opinion. As poorly formed as it may be. Like, I was very grateful to be a very passionate person in general. I'm a very obsessed person. Like, when I'm into something, I'm all the way into it. I say no to most things, but the few things I say yes to, I go deep. Like, most people call me an extremist. Like, he's the most extreme person I've ever met. So, not everyone's like that, right? And so I think about, why am I this way? How to get this way? I think, it goes back to maybe the way I was raised. I mean, a lot of our tendencies and our nature is formed before we're even 8 years old. I was always encouraged to try different things. And I think that a lot of people weren't encouraged to try different things. So they arrive at 20 and they haven't tried nearly as many things. I've tried everything. So I think I would encourage people. I would just pass along that what helped me is my parents encouraging me. So I would pass that encouragement along, and I would say, to any young man or woman, well, start trying some stuff. Yeah. Put yourself out there. Give it a shot. Go, just pick 10 random things and go and do them, and just keep trying different things until you find something that you're excited about and lights you up and gives you energy. I'd also say it's an interesting question, but Brad Feld is also a VC. Yeah, he's a venture capital investor. So he's looking to invest in the 0.0000001% of special individuals who are well suited to go and build billion-dollar companies. It's a totally different, thing. I think, when I aspire to give advice, I'm not trying to help people build world-changing companies. I'm trying to help people become their best selves and live their best lives.
Yeah.
And if they can do that, they'll be happy and they'll be satisfied for themselves. And then they will be in a position to affect the well-being of those in their inner circle. And then the greater the man or the woman, as they know who they are and they start serving themselves and those around them, then those circles get bigger.
Yep.
And best case, you end up as a great man or a great woman who's helped, who's lived in the service of society and helped many people. And the circle is huge. But first, you have to figure out you.
Yeah.
And so, Brad Feld's looking for those people who have that potential to go and do something, and then he wants to commercialize it. So it's a different framing, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, look, I think I would just encourage people to try things, instead of complaining about, I just have no passion. Well, just keep trying. I think it's such a shame when people give up. I've never been someone to give up or quit, right? Like I'm someone who's like, there is one way and that's forward, right? And so I know a lot of people aren't like that. A lot of people are, I could stand still, I could go backwards. Like that's not even an option for me. I'm going forwards, right?
Yeah.
So you can't just inject that into someone. Like I'm lucky to be that way. I realize that. And I want to shake people when they're not like that because I want to make them realize how much great things are ahead, how many beautiful opportunities there are in life, how listening to beautiful songs, making great relationships, food and wine. Like there's so much to be in awe of. Like I'm in constant awe and wonder of how great the world is.
Yeah.
But people don't see the world that way, I want to shake them, but just keep trying stuff until you find something.
Yeah. I think I had this conversation with a coach this week, actually. I was explaining, we were trying to understand like, what's my purpose, right? And come up with a really concise, beautiful, specific statement. I haven't figured it out yet. I've got some ideas.
Yeah.
Pretty close, but like that 4 to 5 word statement.
You want to lay a couple on me? Let's do it. Let's hear it.
Well, the high level of it is like essentially the thing people come to me for advice on is like, how do I basically get out of my comfort zone?
Okay.
And it's typically in the realm of career. Like, how do I start this company or like ask for this amount of money or whatever it is? It's just things that to me, I was never afraid to do it. I was always like, I'm more afraid to not do it. I'm more afraid to get some corporate job or like work a 9 to 5. I'm afraid of like how that's going to kill me.
Terrified.
And I know I felt a lot of loneliness about that in my life and hard to relate to most people because most people aren't that way. But then there's, a kid from the school I went to, Boulder, hit me up this week. He like got my email through the alumni network and was like, "Can I just have some advice?" I was like, "Sure. What do you want advice on?" And it's always on. This happens pretty regularly. It's always about just like how did you like start a company? Like, and they're looking for answers. I'm like, I went to this website and hired this person and like the tactical stuff. But there's never an answer like that. The answer is more just like I just fucking did it,
right? And
just like told myself like I'm just going to do it,
right?
So the purpose lies somewhere in leaning into challenge. I have a tattoo on my arm that's double black diamonds, which symbolizes the most difficult trail on the mountain. I'm a big snowboarder. I'm like, the most difficult trail is where you grow the most, learn the most, feel the most. The feeling at the bottom of that trail when you just came down, you're like, holy shit, I just did that? That's a damn good feeling. One, I have a tattoo because it's a reminder to myself that when that fear comes up of like, this might be really fucking scary. Yeah. I might get really hurt here. This might be really hard. Yeah. Do it anyway.
Right.
It's also...
Where does that come from?
My dad.
Yeah, there you go. So a lot of us are so fortunate to have had parents who instilled those values in us.
I think it came from him. Maybe I was born that way, but born half from him.
Yeah, nurture and nature is probably both. Combination.
For sure. And it's on my inner biceps. You can kind of see a part of it if my shirt's on or something. And I strategically placed it, this part of my body, so I could see it, but also others could see it a little bit as well if I want them to.
Sick.
And it's meant to kind of be to others as well. Like, hey, you've got double black diamonds that are going to come up in your life every single day.
Cool.
Lean into those.
Yeah, cool.
I encourage it.
Yeah.
So the purpose statement is something around there, like lean into the challenge.
Love it.
What my coach said blew my mind. He was like, all you have to do is just do it yourself.
Yes.
You don't have to go and mentor others and encourage others and put out all this content. All you have to do is just fully embody it yourself.
Yeah.
That is, it might feel selfish, but it's actually the most selfless act. Yes. And then now he's like, but I'm going to introduce another phrase, which is self-full. I was like, nice, this is some good stuff. And so I'm curious in your world, how much of this, when you want to shake people and wake them up, do you need to actually shake them and wake them up? Or is it more just like, because I'll tell you what, I follow you on Instagram.
Yeah. Cool.
And I see all the time that you're up at 3:45 a.m.
Yeah.
journaling and reading.
Yes.
And then you're in the gym at 5 a.m.
Yes.
I'm like, fuck, my alarm was set for 6:30 tomorrow. And I pull out my phone and I dial it down to 6. So that is what just happened there was you just shook me to wake me up a little bit earlier.
Yeah.
But you were just doing it for you. Or maybe you were posting it for me. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm curious.
Yeah.
How do you balance that?
It's both. First, I want to touch on something you said, which is so interesting, and I've thought a lot about this. Vedanta teaches that the ultimate service you can do for others is the work you do on yourself. So, by working on yourself, you are genuinely improving the world around you, making the world a better place.
Mm-hmm. Which is so paradoxical to everything we've been taught in Western culture.
Not confusing. It makes a ton of sense when you really get deep on this stuff. But that rocked me. It was like, interesting. Let me think about this. The fact is that if you can become the best version of yourself, the ripple effects on a daily basis of every action you're going to take, every good decision you're going to make, every wise thing you're going to say, and then equally, the lack of unwise things you're going to say, the lack of pain you're going to cause others, the lack of fumbles you're going to make in your career, the lack of all the dark side of not working on yourself, being a lesser version of yourself. By eliminating the lesser version of yourself and leaning in and doing the work and becoming the best version of yourself, you are going to impact the world in immeasurable ways, immeasurable. Mm-hmm. And some more than others. Even if someone's like, how could working on myself help anyone? It does. It truly, truly does.
Yeah. Which is so, I'll use the word again, it's so freeing.
Right.
It's this permission that I can be selfish, as my mom would say, or as my dad would say, and that's actually a good thing.
Right.
And then you start doing it. It doesn't mean be a dick,
right,
or be
right,
a tool to people.
Right.
It's wild.
Wild. Yeah, there are so many thousands of examples I can come up with in my own life. But yeah, when I fully committed to actually just being the best version of myself, all the ways that the externalities, like the external things that I wanted to, the positive impact I wanted to have on the world, it's happening now on a much greater scale than ever before, at a time when I'm so focused on making sure that I take care of my, being myself. And I don't want to confuse the idea of working on yourself with self-care, because a lot of this indulgent self-care things, like a skincare routine for me is not necessary. It's good. If you want good skin, do it, right?
Yeah.
But there's a difference between
What are some examples of working on yourself for you?
Well, for me personally, I live a very Vedantic life now. So I've really bought into this Eastern philosophy, Vedanta, which sort of predates Hinduism and Buddhism and all these things. And it's these universal concepts. It's very practical. It's not like a religion. It's not like a cult. It's not like, hey, this one teaching is right, therefore you have to take this entire book on and you have to. It's very much like, hey, this is just some practical tips to live by. Take the ones you like that really resonate with you, leave the rest of them on the shelf. It's not forceful, which that really opened my mind. That was like, okay, I can get down with this. And then I dug a little deeper, and I got so into this. And it's now it's basically an operating system for my life. And so it starts at 3 a.m. So you mentioned I like to wake up early. So I wake up at 3 and I'll spend 45 minutes to 50 minutes studying Vedanta every morning.
What time do you go to bed?
I'll try to go to bed by 7, most nights. And then one asterisk, people are like, okay, when do you sleep? I let myself sleep in on Saturday morning. So on Saturday morning, I'll wake up 6. And often on those mornings, I don't do the philosophy, because by the time I wake up at 6, I'm getting ready for my training. And I get, so it's not every day, but it's 6 days a week, 5 or 6 days a week.
How often do you wake up and jump out of bed I can't wait to start reading
every day?
Really?
Every time.
From the start?
Every time. Just like anything, momentum, right? So if you do it for a week or two, then 3rd week, 4th week, 5th week, it gets easier. Now, I'm a kid like everyone else. I go out with my friends around the holidays, let's say. Go out, have a big night, have fun, right? Love that. Got to live in the moment, got to live your life. Nothing wrong with that at all. But of course, then that Monday, it's a little harder to wake up at 3. Maybe I'll sleep in until 4 and I'll get up at 4 and I'll get back. And then slowly every day, incrementally get back to 3.
Yep.
But that momentum is everything, right? Sure. One of my gurus, my teachers, he says, in life, balance comes from momentum. Momentum comes from boundaries. So setting boundaries in my life allows me to build the momentum that I need. The momentum is what I need to maintain the balance, right? Standing on a surfboard, it's a lot harder if you're taking the momentum of the wave. It's easier. So I've gotten much better, and I'm not perfect, bro. I'm a work in progress, but I've gotten much better at setting boundaries and knowing what this path leads to, what this path leads to, right? Knowledge is knowing those things. Wisdom is actually doing the right thing.
Yeah.
Right. So
do you ever find yourself grieving the loss that comes with setting a boundary and eliminating something from your life?
No, I think if you do, yeah, of course, maybe in the past, maybe in your earlier iterations of myself, it becomes when you walk the path of wisdom and maybe the first time there's a little like, oh, I've got FOMO, am I missing the party? Or hey, am I missing out on hey, am I sure that just working 80 hours a week in service of others is actually the right way to live, or am I a sucker? Maybe there were thoughts like that in the beginning of this journey, but as you walk the path, those fall away. It's just it's, I guess, the momentum. It just feels right. What feels right feels right.
Yeah. I'm curious about digging into your story a little bit more, because I think there's a lot of inspiration that myself, but also people listening, can really take from this.
Sure.
Can you share a handful, or all, or many of the wonderful things that have just kind of fell into your life in the last couple of years since you fully embodied this practice of working on yourself, setting the boundaries, staying super disciplined? Because we hear it all the time. It's like, close the door and a million other great doors will open.
Yeah.
And it's hard when you're in the moment, whether that's ending a relationship or leaving a job or moving across the country from your parents or whatever it might be for people. It's really hard to be like having the faith and having the faith that it's going to lead to such great things. And then great things start to come, but you're not in the moment like, oh my God, yes, here's finally a great thing that has landed in my lap and I'm going to enjoy this. And all that hardship I went through for the last 4 months, here it is. Could you share some of yours?
I'm going to reframe the question,
please.
But hopefully there is some wisdom or insight in what I do here. So the question is, okay, you've done work on yourself. You're walking this path. What are some of the prizes or benefits from that?
Great.
And I think it's a practical way to look at it, and it's an interesting way to look at it. But the fact is, it's not about the prizes, right? It's about who you become along the way. That's the prize. So it's like, there's this concept in Vedanta that, let's compare it to, are you religious at all? You come back from a religious background or anything, or no?
I was raised Jewish.
Okay.
I always rejected it.
Okay.
And it has become more of a curiosity this year.
So in Judeo-Christian values, there's this concept of sin, right? And righteousness. And it's like, hey, if you're good, you go to heaven, you get the prize. If you're bad, you go to hell, right? That's you don't want to go to hell, right? So it's like this fear-mongering thing to okay. In Vedanta, it throws all that out and it's like, look, nothing feels as good as doing what you ought to do. And you know what that is. You know what you ought to do, right? Nothing feels worse than doing what you know you should not do. So sin is the punishment for sin is not going to hell. The punishment is the agitation of not becoming your true best self, of truly knowing that, hey, I should have done this thing and I didn't fucking do it. I should have eaten this and I ate that. I should have gone to bed early and I didn't. I should have called it after 2 drinks. I had 10. I should have done this thing, it gets darker and darker, right? Everyone knows what they ought to do in any given situation, especially at our age, right? Maybe you can forgive a kid for not knowing, but when you're 20, 30 years old, you know the right call. And so it's that simple. It's just walking the path that you ought to walk, getting on with it, right? So work is not, you work for work's sake. Like you do not fulfill your duties every day and your obligations because there's a big shiny prize at the end. You just do them because that's what you ought to do. And counterintuitively, do I believe that actually doing that will lead to potentially positive outcomes that you may have been referencing? Yeah, of course. I think living a Vedantic life, it's like a paradox. You'll actually unlock all the things but the fact is you're not attached to them, right? So we grew up in a society of attachment to the material world, all these things in the material world, power, fame, status, money, girls, toys, cars, houses. There's this concept in Vedanta of the way to gain anything is to lose it, right? So I think there's practical wisdom here. It's not just all like airy-fairy, attach, you lose, detach, you gain, right? So what you are attached to and what you chase will avoid you. The things that you let go of, they will seek you out almost in the universe. And it's true in so many different things. It's seriously true. When you stop chasing a thing, counterintuitively, you might just find that either A, you realize that it was never the thing you needed anyway. So that's the same thing as gaining it. Deciding you don't need it, it's the same thing as gaining it, right? That's the actual mind hack here. The second you decide, actually, I don't need it, it's the same thing as getting it, right? So, and counterintuitively, the crazy thing about this is the way the universe works is you actually increase the likelihood of getting it. So, you know, you know, I'm going to use simple practical. I don't know who the audience here, a young man, right? Like a girl, right? Like if you're obsessed with a girl and you chase the girl and you smother the girl, she's gone. Okay. If you decide, hey, I'm just going to be the best version of myself and make sure I'm fit, make sure I'm taking care of my obligations and my duties. I'm going to be proud of myself. I'm going to carry myself with self-esteem. Guess what? You know, maybe not, right? Maybe not, but you've given yourself the best chance of getting the girl. And that's a silly example, but it's true in career. It's true in career, right? So it's like you hear this thing about mission, and that's a lot of BS in the tech startup world. You're about mission this and mission that, but I'm telling you right now, you asked me for a practical example of my life. Yeah. When I was 26 years old, I had failed. There was maybe 5 or 6 ventures that I'd worked, and I put my back into these things. I'm no stranger to hard work, and I'm not. You know, I'm no slouch intellectually. Like hypothetically, I thought I should have been successful by now. 26 years old. All these different things failed. Because I was so focused on the $1 billion outcome, buying a house for mom and dad, solving all the problems, being the man. Okay, now I'm 26 and I decided to start a personal training company. And there was some wisdom in me that came unlocked where I was like, you know what? Instead of focusing on the money and the thing and this and the white knuckling it to success, I'm just going to focus on serving my clients and truly taking a genuine, like I mean this in my heart of hearts, like really just want the best for them, really just want them to get the results because I care about them and I love them and I want them, right? And so by being focused on that, I was like, we're just going to focus on being the best we can be for our clients. And that's all we're going to focus on. And I trust over time that this will lead to where I want to go. And here we are 5 years later, and we've made tremendous progress to that regard. And still to this day, I tell the entire staff at Dominate, we've got 50 staff now, you know, a growing business. Say, guys, focus on these sets of core values. This is our mission. Here are our core values, right? You hear those things turn around, but I'm like, guys, trust me. I know you all want to go big time. I know you all want to be a part of this rocket ship company. We all want to build the next Equinox, but we're going to focus on this stuff. And that will happen if we just get this right? And so it's so true. It's a Vedantic thing, but it's like, you know, focus on work. And I tell them every day, work on yourself. Do you want to be a great trainer for this community? You want to be the man? Work on yourself. Be the best version of yourself. I tell my front desk, same thing. What are you doing for yourself? How you taking care of yourself? Because if people come in to Dominate, we're all glowing and full of self-esteem and we're doing what we ought to do, you know, doing the things that make us the best version of ourselves. Our product and our service and that's what people say. They say, I can't put my finger on it, Eddie. I come in to Dominate. There's this magical energy. Everyone's so friendly. Everything's amazing. High energy. I feel lifted. And it's like,
we designed that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yep. You have to.
It's great. I was actually starting to think I want to hear more about how you like to lead and build a team. What are some of the things that you saw in the fitness industry, and you both like in the industry side? What was wrong with gyms and personal training and all that? Also, what did you see in the world of what's being missed and what's wrong with people keeping themselves healthy that inspired what you've built with Dominate and where you're going with Dominate?
Great question. Okay, so fitness industry is what it should be about at its best is helping people build good habits, helping people break bad habits, helping people work on themselves and become the best version of themselves, helping them be not just physically strong, but strong mentally, right? And learning what is mental strength and how does that lead to all these other. It's for me, it's spiritual. It's literally like I think about Dominate. It's like a modern day church, right? What church used to be, and church still is this for many parts of the world, but you know, maybe less so for our generation these days. But you know, you need a place to go to work on yourself and be, hey, I'm going to aspire to become a better version of myself, and I'm willing to sacrifice this hour of my day or whatever. And we're going to do it in unison, and we're going to do it together, and we're going to encourage each other. And there's going to be this community and this beautiful place we all go to work on ourselves and lift each other up. It's what church used to be. Now and then I'm not saying church isn't that still, but you know, myself, most of my friends, we don't go to church, right? What do? We go to Dominate. And it's like, for me, it's like, what a beautiful thing that we can provide that for people.
Did you see that missing in gyms everywhere?
Oh, look, I think it's a fragmented industry. It's a huge industry. It's everywhere. It's global. There's probably gyms that are like that. There's probably many more that are not like that. like any category of businesses, there's probably guys and gals doing it for the right reasons. There's guys and gals doing it for the wrong reasons. There's some of them doing it well, some of them doing it poorly. We're not the only gym in the world. We're one where we have aspire to grow and build more, but I think we're doing it right. I think there's plenty of other examples of gyms and businesses doing it right. You asked about the industry. Those are that's fitness at its best. The industry is full of a lot of, obviously it's about physical appearance, and so there's a lot of vanity, there's a lot of ego. I mean, so much ego. It's a shame. There's a lot of zero-sum thinking. I've learned a lot about the characteristics often behind the big brands and the players who built these brands and why they got started and what they're doing. And some of them are doing it for the right reasons, and others I think are just a ticking time bomb. It's not going to last, because I think that it comes through in your product, and I think it comes through in the people who work for you, and it comes through in the way your products and service, So I think that it's a unique industry because you get to make money and also help people and do something positive. And there's a lot of businesses like that these days. There's also a lot that are not like that, right? But what a gift to be able to make a living and build something while also doing something that's inherently positive and helping people. And the more money we make, ideally, the more people we're helping. And it's this virtuous cycle. I think that's beautiful. And what a gift that I found something like that. And I don't know, I see a lot of people who have this opportunity, like I'm talking about other founders, other businesses, and maybe they're so focused on the success side of it and missing out on this other thing, right? We're very focused on that part, the service to others, right? And helping people become the best version of themselves and live their best lives. We're obsessed with that idea. And I think if we continue to focus on that and obsess over that, the other stuff will work out.
Yeah.
So anyway, look, the fitness industry it's an exciting industry. It's great. There's a lot of beautiful things about it. It's a tough industry, so it's very competitive, right? We live in LA. How many gyms are there around here? Hundreds, literally. Pilates studios, boutique fitness classes, concepts. Yeah. There's the mixed martial arts stuff. There's the yoga stuff. There's the breathwork now. There's the wellness. It's competitive, right? It's not an easy industry. You got to work really hard. You got to be okay with low margins, right? All that stuff. So I love that. I love challenges. I love adventures. So I'm perfectly suited to compete and to do those hard things. But it's a pretty scary industry for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Capital intensive.
I have an interesting memory. When I was 25, maybe just turned 26, I got this weird itch. I don't really even fully know where it came from. Maybe it was just like COVID agita. But the itch was to walk into an MMA gym and start taking classes.
Cool.
And so I was living in Denver. I went to Easton Training Center in Denver. Really awesome spot.
Sweet.
I'd heard about it because I lived there for a while and just was like, all right, it's a place I'll go check out. And I was like, hey, I used to wrestle a little bit in high school, but I don't really know how to fight. Can you teach me how to fight? Fucking scary thing to do. Is to walk into a fighting gym with no combat skills, and everyone there has great combat skills. Yeah. And to be like, hey, I'm Jake, I'm new. Can you teach me? Yeah. It was really hard. And could not have been nicer. Could not have been a more welcoming environment. And I got obsessed. And I was going 2-3 times a day. I was waking up out of nowhere. I was waking up every morning at like badass. 6 a.m. to go. And there was like 2 people in the gym, and I would just train solo. And then I'd go to class in the afternoon. I'd go to class again in the evening. And it was fantastic. And then that led me to jiu-jitsu, and rest is history. But there's one morning I was in there probably 3 or 4 weeks after joining, and the jiu-jitsu department staff was having a meeting on the mat. They were sitting in a circle, and there were probably like 7 or 8 people sitting around. And the guy one of the owners of the gym, runs the jiu-jitsu program there, was clearly trying to give some leadership advice, training to staff. What he said to them, I'll never forget. He said, people walk into this gym fucking terrified. They were like, guys, you've been training your whole life. You don't know what it's like to be overweight and 29 years old and never picked up a weight in your life, never fought a day in your life, and walk into a training gym and be like, hey, I'm new. Right. Can you train me? And I'm hearing this and I'm like, that was me. Holy shit. Right. And he said, so we have a list of things that you are going to do to encourage that person comes back tomorrow and comes back again the next day. You're going to always remember their first name. You're going to text them after their first week and be like, how was your first week? How you feeling? Do you want a free massage? Do you want to come in for a private lesson? How can we help you with your journey? All these checkmark, like tactical things to make somebody feel more comfortable, more encouraged, more accepted in this new scary community. They're like, because the last thing I want is them coming to Easton for a free class, trial class, leaving and joining a different gym. Because who knows what the hell they're doing down there. We don't know their philosophy. We can't trust that they're in good hands at that gym, but we can trust they're in good hands here. I was like, God, what a damn good lesson on leadership that day. What's your version of that?
Yeah, he nailed it, bro. I mean, that's a great, it's a universal lesson for all gym owners and operators. He sounds like a wonderful leader. He gets it. I'm sure that they're going to be commercially successful and viable because he's training his staff on that stuff. This is the stuff that you train your staff on from day one and then perpetually throughout the journey. So, fitness as a whole, as a product is intimidating for the general population. It's very intimidating.
It's hard to empathize with that when you've been doing it your whole life, I'm sure.
Yeah. Well, look, I think it might be, but it shouldn't be. I mean, it's not. It's for me, it doesn't require Einsteinian intelligence to understand that most people are not healthy and fit, and they see a community of people who are, and they feel like an outsider. And so breaking down that insecurity and making them feel welcome and maybe not physically, but metaphorically putting your arms around them and saying, hey, you're one of us now. Like, come check it out. Like, this is great. It's for all levels. And that's what we've always done really, really well at Dominate. And I'm sure many other gyms are doing that really well. I'm sure some of them aren't doing it well and they will pay the price for that. You have to. That's the whole thing is like you've got this subset of the population that are super fit and healthy, and then you've got everyone else. And that's the opportunity. So for a gym like us, at least, we're a mass market product. We aspire to build big communities where everyone from all walks of life is welcome. There's no snootiness. There's no elitism. It's not, hey, it's only for young people. It's not, hey, it's only for athletes. It's for everyone. We'll take the young people. We'll take the athletes, right? We'll take the studs too. We can, give them just as good of an experience as we can the 60-year-old who's first time off the couch in decades, So that's our sort of brand, unique, value prop is we're a big box. But, for different gyms, I think universally, if they want to build a business, they should think about the mass market. Maybe there's some special gyms that just cater to the elite, but that's not us. And you nailed it. Yeah, you absolutely nailed it. This guy sounds like he's doing a great job. And we'd love to hire him.
Guess to start an MMA department at some point. So let's talk a little bit to the young man who maybe has never really gotten off the couch, did not grow up an athlete, is starting to hit that age, mid-20s, where their body's changing and it's all downhill from here if they're not on top of it. And they're realizing, oh, shit, I eat a bag of Doritos and I feel that the next day. Where do you start with this guy?
Yeah, 100%. Dude, starting fitness is the start for me. This is for me, and I see it for so many other people. It's the beginning. It's the first place to start. Right? When you feel lost, when you feel hopeless, when you feel anxious, when you feel depressed, when you've let yourself down, when you've let people around you down, when you're disgusted with yourself, any of these dark things we all go through one time and another in varying degrees. Start with physical fitness. It's the first thing that will be it'll be the first domino that leads to this positive flywheel in your life. You can change the whole world just by starting by getting fit. And I've been, through my sort of journey phase of my 20s, whatever you want to call it, maybe late teenage, early, there's ups and downs. And I always came back to fitness and it was always my passion and my thing. But to your point, not everybody is naturally already, sort of a fitness person. So I encourage those people to give it a chance, give it a shot. Go to the gym, walk on the treadmill for 5 minutes. Come back the next day, walk for 6. Come back the next day, walk for 7. Just that. There's this little thing that happens in your brain, this like dopamine release, this feeling of satisfaction, this feeling of growth, this feeling of momentum. Day 5, you're up to 10 minutes, right? It can be that simple. That's a silly example, right? Because most people are going to be like, 10 minutes on the treadmill, come on. It doesn't matter where you start is my point. What matters is that you begin. You just start. I literally, dude, I've come back from, there were times, I'll use myself as an example. If you have a bad month, for example, right? And for whatever, maybe you get an injury, maybe you have something going on in your personal life, something you missed the gym for a month, right? That first day back, it's not about the workout. It's about the fact that you showed up. So just showing up, tying your shoes, walking around the gym, swinging your arms, and then leave. Leave after 8 minutes. But you showed up. You got in. Okay, that's now you've got one stake in the ground, but now you can come back the next time and go a little bit further. Maybe the next time you come back, you do some jump rope. Right, you do some stretching, you do a few sit-ups. That's it, right? And now this is deliberately silly, right? Like that sounds like what a waste of a trip. You went there for a few sit-ups. My point is, it doesn't matter where you start. Just get in there and do something, because by day 3, day 4, and even if it's, hey, I'm going to go once a week this week, Next week, I'm going to go twice a week, right? I'm going to do that for a few months. And then I'm going to aspire to get to 3 times a week. But right, whatever it is, the point is it's the progress. It's the progress, not perfection, right? You should always chase progress, not perfection. No one's going to be perfect. And especially if you're coming from a background where you're not familiar with fitness and you don't know where to start, just get in there. Just get in there and move your body. There's so much information now with YouTube and the internet. If you're like, I literally don't know what to do, go on YouTube and type in, ask ChatGPT. I'm a beginner. I don't know where to start. It'll literally tell you. It'll be within 5% accuracy of what a world-class trainer would tell you.
Yeah.
Right. So you have the information. Just go try it. Just do something. Anyway, the whole point is, right, so once you begin, there's this positive flywheel where, okay, now you start to step into a new version of yourself. You start to become, you sort of shed this feeling of inadequacy, this feeling of, destitution, all these things. You can be a complete wreck, but if you take care of your physical health, your mental health will follow. And following your mental health will be like this sense of self-esteem and self-worth. And following that, no matter what material path you're on in your life, whether it's, you want to start a podcast, you want to start a fitness company, you just want to get, a job at McDonald's, whatever. That will that will come, that will happen as a result of you doing these first few things for yourself. It's just a fact. Like, it's an absolute fact. Fitness. And that's why I'm always looking at athletes thinking like, whatever you want to do in life, you can do it because you've mastered your mind, you've mastered your body. Now all you have to do is apply that same discipline and that same process to the exterior, to the material world. And that's why I was always so confident as a kid, because it was like anything I set my mind to, I achieved it. I just never done anything in the real world. So when I stopped all this athletic stuff and I started focusing on the real world, I knew like, okay, if I just do the same thing that I've always done, which is like put your head down, be patient, work for weeks and months, like block everything out, be focused, that you can achieve anything. And it's true, you know. So starting with fitness is where you'll find that sort of build that habit. It's a habit. It's a process that you can apply to other domains outside of fitness. Fitness is just a way for people to, it's almost like for their mental health, right? It's a way for you to feel your best and be your best. It could be 30 minutes a day. It could be less. It could be 15 minutes a day. Just moving your body, opening things up, feeling like, feel the breath coming in, feel the breath coming out. Like, that's fine. But something I've found, generally speaking, people feel better than not. Right, the fitter they get. So that's something I've seen as a universal positive. That's why I'm so passionate about it, because I've seen it help so many people and change so many lives. Myself first and foremost. So it's not about being an elite athlete. It's not it. Like, that's totally not what we preach at Dominate. It's just, and this is actually our mission statement. We talked about you're trying to figure out your personal mission statement. I was on that same trying to figure it out, and maybe it'll change again. But right now, it's helping people become their best selves and live their best lives. Right? And that's their best life, their best self. It's not what I tell them it is. It's what they tell me it is. Right? And just helping them get to what that is. They tell me, I help them get there.
Love it. So a bit of a ritual to wrap up the show here. What do you think it means to be a man nowadays?
To be a man. Well, again, it depends on the individual. Going back to what we just said, right? I mean, it can mean, we can define different words a million different ways. I don't care how you define it. It doesn't offend me the way you have, What does it mean for me? I come back. I'll mention a cool story. I traveled to India to study at an ashram in the hills of Pune outside of Bombay. And I met a man who they say in the Vedantic world, he's a very spiritual man, and he's said to be enlightened. He's said to be one of the few people alive today who are enlightened, and a few people in history who have ever achieved this level of spirituality or of wisdom, right? He's a very highly esteemed man, very famous man. He's a very important man in this world. And I only had about an hour with him, and I was with another close friend of mine, and it was an honor to meet him. And he had a very special presence about him, and it was a fascinating moment in my life. And I had a couple of chances to say a few things to him, and I had one thing I thought, this is my question I'm going to ask him. He's like, if you get to ask this man one thing. I said, Swami, his name's Swami Parthasarathi, and Swami means teacher. So, and you say you say Swami to a teacher, and then to a teacher you really respect, you say Swamiji. So I think I said, Swamiji, what is a great man? That's all I said. And he's getting on. He's a pretty old guy, and he's slowing down, and he's got a little tremor. And it was like he knew it was coming. It was one of the most remarkable moments in my life. It was like he knew it was coming. Looked straight at me. He said, giver. That's it. I said, what is a great man? He said, giver. And then the room fell silent for maybe 20 seconds. I just sat there and he just looked right at me. And it was so interesting because there'd been this conversation happening in my head for many years prior about me. I'm someone who I take a lot of pride in being a provider for my, people I love, and for my team, and for giving more than I take, and for being that guy in the community who just shows up and works in the service of others. And it was almost it was so reassuring, right? As someone who aspired to become my own definition of a great man. And it was the most reassuring thing. It was almost like he was saying, keep going, son. Keep giving. Keep giving. Just give. Just fucking give. More time, harder work, more. And I was like, it was just maybe that, that's what it just clicked for me. So it was like, wow. So what is a great man? A giver, right? Someone who provides for others. And we think about traditional male-female roles, that's all up for debate now. The world's changing. Like, it's not about that. I'm just thinking about, what do I think as a man? A man is a provider. A man is someone who takes care of people, not just being a provider, but keeping people safe, being the protector, being the provider, providing safe space for people to learn and to grow and to become their best selves and live their best lives, and providing that sort of space for them to do that. It's my version of a man, I guess, and a great man. So, but to each their own, and it's not about pushing that on other people. It's just what I've just decided for myself. And a lot of people might be like, give. Like, what about, like, one thing I'll say is the more I give to others and the more I sacrifice in the service of others, the more fulfilled I feel and the happier I feel. And counterintuitively, doors open for you. So take from that what you want, what you will. But yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, brother.